far away from freshwater as one could get. This is my final resting place. A name I could hardly pronounce when I lived here, Bugawantalawa. A few years after I passed away, my dear husband, Charles Hay Cameron, was laid to rest next to me. It was Charles's wish to end his days here in the hills of Ceylon, among his beloved plantations, away from our dear friends in England. Although I could now understand his obsession at the time, I came here reluctantly, but grew to love it. I am Julia Margaret Pattle Cameron. Years after my death, my grandniece Virginia Woolf, who I never met, described me as the daughter, the wife, and the mother of the British Empire. My life ended too soon. Yet, I am still remembered all these years after my spirit has left this world. I achieved much with photography in its pioneering days in the few years I had left on this earth, and am so pleased that my work and I are remembered well into the second millennia after my death. I must also add with great pride that I am revered as one of the greatest practitioners of photography of all time. For when I was here in this world, you gave me no adequate deserving praise. My work should have electrified you with delight and startled the world. I should have been given a crown of diamonds, perhaps, or, at the very least, an honourable mention for my beloved photographs of perfect perfection. For me, my successes of my beloved photographs came like meteors out of anxious, troubled times. The history of the human face is a book we don't tire of if we can get its grand truths and learn them by heart. Charles convinced me that we should move to Ceylon, and I agreed to this with some reservations, as I was leaving my home and dear friends in the Isle of Wight, freshwater. Freshwater meant a lot to me, my friends who helped me in this endeavour, who gave me so much encouragement in this, my life's work, those faces from life that I immortalised for all time, those narratives I brought to life for generations of artists after me to love and to emulate. Moving to Ceylon, I left my work, my photography, my beloved studio and darkroom where I have had so much success. So much more work I could have done, adding to the enormous contribution I had already made to art, photography, and our time. Charles was preoccupied for many years with his estates in Ceylon and spent his happiest days there. No sooner he was back home in freshwater, he spoke of nothing else but his beloved island, his land, transforming his hills and valleys into endless miles of plantations that gratifies his soul. The anticipation of each trip back to Ceylon fills him with so much joy, happiness, and good humour. The melancholy he generated when he was home was infectious. It was unbearable. For me, in the end, to give in was easier than to stand my ground, as I have done for such a long time. The final day before we left, Charles had come to life, running here, running there, farewell, adieu, excited, while I gifted my beloved camera to Ellen Terry, making her promise to always make certain that the lens was slightly unfocused. Leaving England at a late stage of life seemed so final that I packed 2 coffins, one for Charles and one for me, on the chance that we may never return to our beloved England. At least the boxes were useful, as we could fill them with my valuable books and china, safe from harm during the long voyage east. After all, I was, in a way, going home too. Not to fond memories of old Calcutta where I was born, but to Ceylon. We departed Southampton on October the 21st, 1875. My sisters showered us with gifts, tea, and a cow for fresh milk. The journey through the new Suez Canal was much faster than we had experienced in previous voyages and uneventful, although we were in good company. Charles and I were accompanied by our son Harding, returning to his civil service job in Ceylon, my grandniece and adopted daughter Mary Clogston, and our maid Ellen, little E. Ottingham. I need to tell you that amidst all this bustling world of 380 people, my husband sat in majesty like a being from another sphere, his white hair shining like the foam of the sea. The passage through the Red Sea was unbelievably hot, and the thick hot air lingered into the night. We had to sleep in our cabins with a locked porthole instead of up on mattresses stretched out in the saloon set up for overheated passengers. We arrived in Ceylon on November 20th, 1875, and I promptly fell seriously ill. I assumed this was due to my heroic efforts preparing for the move, as well as the anguish of partings. Fortunately, I had recovered by January. All our remaining children, our 4 boys, were now working in Ceylon. Harding, working for the Governor, Sir William Gregory, and based in Kalutara, Ewan running his Rathangoda estate, Charles Hay and Henry Herschel Hay in their newly acquired Lipikele estate. Charles and I often stayed with Harding at Kalutara and have also rented a bungalow near Cameron's Land in the mountains. I worry about my sons, their health and safety in Ceylon. Henry has promised me not to take part in elephant shooting parties until after I am dead. I have suggested that he partake in amateur theatricals instead. Harding is constantly away on his long trips for months, working in rural villages. He once tried to stave off a flood, working in knee-deep water for hours. I had to scold him for his silliness, and although I admire his heroism, I made him promise never to take such risks again. My life in Ceylon has become an acceptable monotony. As for excitement, when our hens have hatched their chickens and a cow has calved, the household is in a stir. And when the Pattle boy brings the Daily Mail, my heart beats a little more rapidly and then subsides, too thankful if it is all the same as yesterday. On the day that the English mail comes in, there is an awakening. I jump up, seize hold of the brown tin box hung by a leather strap over the shoulder of my little E-Bon Mercury, say to little E, our maid, rapidly, "Give him a present," and empty my box. The only relief from this monotony was the visit of my dear friend Marion North in Kalutara. I at once made up my mind to make a picture of her to revive my photography that I have neglected for so long. In the following days, I managed to set up my darkroom and my camera in a flurry of activities never seen in this country. Dressing her in flowing draperies of cashmere wool, no doubt very uncomfortable in the noonday sun with the thermometer close to 100 degrees, while she stood patiently still for the exposures to complete. However, I am sad to say that my frenzied activity was in vain. The images failed to flatter. Finally, I decided to use the gardener's boy carrying a water vessel and a picture of the artist at her easel, an image so unusual for me. Today I saw a group of villagers that came to see the Sahib. I quickly made up my mind that I should make a photograph. I tried to explain to them what I was about to do without much success. So I rushed into the darkroom to prepare my plates. I hadn't done this for a long period, and when I finally emerged into daylight with my camera ready, the group was still there squatting, as they are accustomed to, in the shade of the veranda. They were reluctant to move out into the sun for me to make my photograph. With great difficulty, I managed to position the group for the photograph with the help of Mr. Cassie Chetty, my son's assistant, while he threatened them not to move for the duration of the exposure. I so wish I was back in Freshwater in my studio with any number of willing participants. I had done much for my art and lived a full life. The legacy I left behind with my photographs surpasses that of any artist that ever lived. They have been dissected and analysed by generations of historians and artists. They stand as a testament to not only an important pioneering practice of this art form, an art form that has clearly become universal, but also a tribute to a pivotal period of science and culture and the men and women that set great examples for the modern era. Time and illness were against me. Despite all my successes, I am sad that I couldn't continue my work to my last days, that I wasn't able to make some successful photographs in Ceylon as I had done in Freshwater. Nevertheless, it warms my heart that I was able to do what I did with what I can see now as the primitive beginnings of an art form that has now become universal practice. My last few years in Ceylon were difficult as far as my art was concerned. The separation from my home in England, the short period of time I had to get to know my new home, and my failing health, all played a part in this. I feel that my lack of health contributed to me not being able to find a compelling project and a purpose to photograph in Ceylon. I didn't have enough time to get to know Ceylon and the natives of this land. Although at the time I felt I knew them well, and the responsibility we had in helping the natives of Ceylon to evolve into a westernised present, we believed then that the British Empire, founded on moral superiority, was responsible for subjugating its subjects in order to inspire their loyalty and obedience, pulling them away from their primitive slumber to become useful and productive modern beings. At the end of 1878, after returning to Kalutara from a short trip back to England, Harding had become ill, and Charles and I had to move to Henry's bungalow, Glen Cairn in the mountains. It was here that I too became ill with my dreaded bronchial complaint, and on the 26th day, January 1879, I, in my bed, looked at the setting sun over the magnificent hills, and uttering the word "beautiful," closed my eyes for the very last time. Many years after my death, Virginia Woolf, my great-grandniece, made much of my life and death in her theatrical interpretations. Many others, too, spoke kindly of me in their obituaries. Even one of my ardent critics, the Photographic News, concluded rather tepidly that I had exerted a good influence on other photographers, and that I was also a poetess of no mean order. My funeral in Bugawantalawa was happier, with sunshine and birds singing, than most I have experienced in England. 2 bullocks pulled the cart carrying my coffin draped in a white cloth up the mountain road as far as they could. Then it was carried by natives from Rothengoda Estate the rest of the way to the burial grounds at St Mary's Church, Bugawantalawa, where I was laid to rest. My dear ailing Charles did, after all, outlive me, but not for very long, and was laid beside me at St Mary's Churchyard for eternity, as it was his wish to remain on his beloved island forever. I have no regrets. As time has shown, I achieved much in a very short period of practice, and paved the way for future generations to accept the photographic portrait as a true art from life, to love and honour humanity. As I once wrote, genius and love have each fulfilled their part, and both unite with force and equal grace, whilst all that we love best in classical art is stamped forever on the immortal face.